Hey guys, Daniel here. This is another video. My next guest needs no introduction. It's the legendary Mark Waid. If you're a comic book fan, you've no doubt heard this name. I could list out all of his comics and be here all day. What could I talk about? You may know him for his work on Fantastic Four, Superman Birthright, which I believe to be like the best Superman story of all time. He's also gotten to work on stuff like Daredevil, Kingdom Come, Doctor Strange, the Justice League of America, Tower of Babel, Captain America, Irredeemable, and Incorruptible, Black Widow, Archie, and of course, The Flash. And he's the publisher of Humanoids, but he has a new series coming out, Batman slash Superman, World's Finest. But Mark, thank you so much for coming on. How are you doing today?
Good. I tell you, for somebody who needs no introduction, that was a really good introduction.
It was a very long introduction, wasn't it?
No, but a good one.
A good one. Are you a fan? Thank you. Listen, I pride myself. I'm not very good at talking, but I'm very good at waffling. I've noticed. I can just spitball on the spot. But no, absolutely. Thank you so much for coming on, sir. I'm so excited to chat with you. Been looking forward to it all week. And like I said, I got a ton of blackmail on you, so it's kind of your prerogative to answer all my questions to the full extent. So yeah. So first thing, what's your credit card information? I want to know about you. What's the three numbers on the back of your credit card? Mother's maiden name. I'm just interested in you.
Yeah, mother's maiden name is Roy. So there you go.
I'm not getting more than that. No,
that's all I'm going to give you. That's all.
One day, one of you will slip up, and I'll be swimming in that comic book money. That's all it takes.
I'll give you Superman's social security number, but I'm not going to give you my own. So
Superman, I'm kind of afraid of. No, actually, Superman would probably be very kind about it. So yeah, if you give me Batman's social security number, I'm not taking that. No, I think
no, he will hunt you down.
Yeah, I'm not. I'm not. Maybe he could have a new Robin. I think I'd suit that role. Yeah. If Batman breaks into my house and kidnaps me and makes me become his Robin, DC, call me. Batman 2 has to come out soon enough.
Yeah, there's worse things. Sure.
No, absolutely. But let's get right into it. So with all this Batman, Superman talk right into it. First of all, Batman slash Superman's World Finest. That's that new. When does that come out? Can you tell
Comes out the week of March 14th, so 2 weeks from today.
2 weeks from today. So yeah, by the time this video's out, it'll probably still be 2 weeks, but March 14th. But so you've gotten to work on both of these characters, before, of course. So how does this series come about? Did you pitch it to DC? Did you get blackmail on some of the editors, or?
It was simply a matter of when there was a regime change with publishers at DC, and so the phone started ringing off the hook, which was incredibly flattering. And DC said, "Just come back, do what you want to do. What do you want to do?" And I pitched a few things, and they all said, "That's great." And I said, I got to tell you, just for the record, I know you're publishing a Batman Superman book now, and Gene Yang he's doing a great job. I am in no way trying to take his job, but if for some reason that ever comes open, that's the dream job.
Yeah.
And sure enough, like a month or a month and a half later, I got the call that says, "Listen, we're ending that book, and since we're ending that book, there's a hole in the schedule for it. Do you want to do another version of it?" I'm like, "Absolutely, I do." So was on that immediately.
Nice. Yeah, absolutely. And so writing these two characters is obviously something you got to do before. So while you were working on them, stuff like Kingdom Come, have you always thought, "Oh man, I'd love to write a comic with just these two characters"? Has that ever crossed your mind, and now you've finally gotten to do it?
It's a little bit more than that. There's several factors. One factor is just that's how I was introduced to Superman as a comic book reader back in the day. I loved World's Finest comics back when I was a kid, when it was the Superman, Batman, Robin team. And beyond that, it's not like writing Justice League. It plays into one of what I think is my strengths, which is being able to take us one or two characters at a time and really sort of focus on them and how they relate to one another. So that's the joy of it, and the fun of it. I mean, there's big adventure, there's big dumb adventure, there's things being punched, there's all kind of action through time and space, but at the heart of it, it really is about these guys, mostly as they're traveling from place to place, just having conversations that you never thought you would have, or you never imagined they would have, and their take on each other. Because my take is that they're friends.
Oh yeah, and I know that's kind of something that a lot of people like. I think there's no relationship as I think unique as that Batman and Superman dynamic. Like you look at comics, I don't think maybe Iron Man and Captain America, although they don't have that same, like, you can't. I don't know if you compare them together as well as you can Batman and Superman. And I think it's like that's one of the most sought after duos. And you kind of see, oh yeah, they're enemies, they're friends, and you can have all these different takes. So your take is that they're just like they're friends.
Exactly. And that's just my take. And it's in no way a knock on anybody else's take. But for me, part of the appeal is I just think they would be friends if for no other reason than Batman is a master strategist. And if he's a master strategist, he's not going to get on the wrong side of Superman. Right? So that's one thing. The other thing is it's different. I mean, it's a take that we're not used to seeing in comics. Mostly the take it tends to be these guys were at best, grudging friends or the at loggerheads or whatever. And I thought, that's great, but why don't we try a different take and see if, because it's different and it's not something we're used to seeing these days.
Yeah, absolutely. So clear up this question for me. When they fly around, does Superman hold Batman in one hand and Robin in the other, and he's just flying around like that? Is that canon?
I've yet to figure that out, because I actually had a scene in which I realized I had to have Superman fly both Batman and Robin, and so I just skipped over that part.
No, here's what you do. You have Superman you have Robin on the back and Superman cradling Batman like that.
Here's the thing. It would be okay if Robin were still like 13 or 12 or 13 in the series, but he's more like 17. So it's a little weird. It's funny you say that, because I was looking at a page the other day that made me laugh of Dan Mora's artist, the artist Dan Mora, who's doing an amazing job. And it really is. It's Superman, and he's got, Batman, he's got his hands under Batman's armpits, and he's just flying around. Batman just, completely vertical, and Superman's completely horizontal, and they're moving along.
So we could put that Kingdom Come, that dramatic moment where they both talk about the value of human life, next to, of course, Superman just carrying Batman like that.
Exactly.
They're both canon. They both happened like on the exact same day, even. Why not? Let's just say. But no, so writing that Superman and Batman dynamic, I imagine, like, you look at your work and I think you have this great, lighthearted quality, which does come true. But then, like, you look at Daredevil and it's like, okay, obviously you hate Matt Murdock because you just punish this guy throughout the whole run. But you can do that. I think that fun aspect, which it does come true. Like when you're reading the Mark Waid, this is going to be a fun comic, and I see that a lot. So has that come kind of naturally too? I imagine it would for a writer of your caliber, writing that Superman and Batman dynamic.
It does. The dynamic comes easily to me because I've loved these characters since I was a kid, and I know them better than I know most of my own family. So that's easy. The tone of it, is the basic tone is big adventure, but as with Daredevil, I like to switch it up. I don't like to write comics that are all sweetness and light and all jokey and all, low stakes. I mean, my favorite thing to do as a writer is to lead you along. Oh, that's fun. I'm having fun. And then you turn the page and it's like, oh my God, Daredevil standing in a room full of
Daredevil's decapitated.
Exactly. Daredevil's decapitated. Oh my God. And so there's a little bit of that in World's Finest. I'm working to get a little bit of that in World's Finest, that I want that constant. I want you constantly on the back foot. You're not sure whether or not the next scene is going to be kind of lighthearted or an adventuresome or something really sort of shockingly startling and evil.
Yeah, absolutely. That sounds fantastic. But so, let me ask you, Doom Patrol also make an appearance in this, and I know you've gotten to work on Doom Patrol before. Would I be correct as an editor? Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so what made you say you want to bring the Doom Patrol into this series?
Two reasons. One is that I love the Doom Patrol, but the bigger reason is because we've never seen these characters together. We've never seen Batman and the Doom Patrol together.
Never.
We've never seen Superman and this version of the Doom Patrol together. We've never seen Doom Patrol villains in the Superman Batman world, and so that's part of my own self-imposed rule for this book, is I want to fill it with things we've never seen before. In the second issue, there's a really good scene between Supergirl and Robin that lasts for several pages. And the thing that astounded me when I started thinking about it is, in 80 years, we have never once, ever, to the best of my knowledge, ever seen Dick Grayson and Supergirl share a scene.
Really?
Ever. They've never spoken to each other, as far as I know, except for, hey, Supergirl over there, it's Brainiac. But they've never had a conversation. And I don't remember ever seeing them on panel together, except maybe in the background of a big crowd scene. So great. Let's do more of that.
Yeah, absolutely. And that sounds fantastic. But when I got to interview my best friend, Grant Morrison, we are best friends.
Oh, your best friend. Yeah.
Obviously, I milk that for all it's worth every single day. I'm at the dentist. I'm going to milk this for all it's worth. I'm going to say you're my new best friend. It doesn't matter if we're best friends now. Thank you.
Take that, Grant Morrison. Yes.
Thank you, best friend Mark Waid. You're invited to my birthday party. I'll fly you out from LA. Actually, you can pay for that. That's your gift to me. You can pay for that.
Yes.
But no, actually, what I love about I think Batman and Superman is like I think your take on them being good friends is like the best take. And as much as I do love a good old fashioned Batman versus Superman, I do love that take more. I think like I mean I grew up with my sister playing the Lego games, and it was Superman and Batman friends. I was like, yeah, okay, that's comics when these two kind of the most powerful men in the world are friends. And like the thing is, like I recently had on a current Superman artist of Superman, son of Kal-El, Keen Tormey, Irish fella, he's fantastic. And we were talking about that dynamic of Batman and Superman, and I think we both looked at it like they're the two kind of sides of justice. Batman operates in the dark and Superman operates in the light, but they both have the same goals. And I think that's what a lot of people kind of tend to miss. They look at them as two separate characters.
Right. What did I say in Kingdom Come? It was, when you scrape everything away from Batman, what you're left with is somebody who doesn't want to watch anybody else die.
Yeah.
And that's Superman at heart. So at the end of the day, they have identical goals. So
this is why you're my best friend, Mark. This is why.
So I maintain this is why Batman doesn't, is Superman's friend, because he's not stupid enough to not be Superman's friend.
Yeah, absolutely. And like, I think when everyone thinks of a writer, they think of that iconic character they associate them with, and I don't know, for me, like the first comic of yours I ever read, I have it right here. I've had this on my bookshelf for years. It's Daredevil Volume 2. I got this while I was in holiday on Canada a couple of years ago. I remember so vividly. I was going like, no, I'm not a fan of Superman anymore. I'm edgy. I'm gritty now. Daredevil's my favorite because he's blind and he punches people in street alleys, and he lives in the mud, stuff like that. So I picked up this book, and like it opened with like Ant-Man and Hank Pym and Iron Man, and they're all helping Daredevil, and I was like, yeah, that's comics when you have this universe of people that can help each other. So I credit 3 creators to getting me into comics. That's you, Scott Snyder, and Grant Morrison. Been through 2 of you, and Scott may be on the way soon. But yeah, there you go. So I just like to thank you genuinely for coming on and writing this book where Daredevil was decapitated, and that gave me nightmares for like 2 weeks. But yeah, thanks for that.
That it's a blast. I mean, I love this book. I love working on Daredevil with Chris Samnee. He was the best. Yeah,
exactly. And like we'll touch more on Daredevil later, but like we just said there, we always associate it right with that. But for me, it's always been kind of your take on Superman. It's just I associate with Superman, and like obviously not to discredit your other work. Your other work is fantastic, but Superman just to me has always been Mark Waid is Superman. And I wish I had Superman Birthright here, but I lent it to one of my friends, and the sap hasn't given it back yet because he was like, I want to get into comics, Daniel, because believe it or not, when you say, well, lads, listen, I have a comic book channel where I talk about comic books. It doesn't make you as cool as you would think it would. No, but one of my friends like, so what comics should I read? It's like, listen, man, I'm going to hook you up. I'll give you Superman Birthright. Excellent book. And I gave it to him. He says he's giving me it back. So if you're watching this, me and my best friend Mark Waid are going to find you if you don't give you that back. But so this is obviously a very long-winded question, but who is Superman to you? I asked this of Grant and I asked this of Philip Kennedy Johnson, and I'd love to hear your take, but just who is Superman to you besides Crypto's owner? Who is Superman to you?
Superman is someone who can do anything, can have anything, can take anything, could be the most selfish human being on the planet, and no one could stop him. And instead, he uses all of his powers in service to other people, as opposed to taking anything on his own. His selflessness, I think, is his main superpower. And that's what I love most about Superman. But there are many, many other things. Asking me who Superman is and trying to contain me to just an hour is a dangerous play.
Pull out a diagram of all your favorite Superman comics. So we start here.
I think Superman is, and this is sort of key to my understanding of him, and this is sort of key to understanding my version of Superman. And there are many other versions that are just as valid and so forth. But to me, Superman is lonely. To me, Superman is not like anybody. He grew up not like anybody else. And Clark Kent is an attempt to be among us, but Clark Kent is a disguise. Superman's the real guy, Clark Kent's the disguise, or more accurately, I guess, Smallville Clark is the real guy, and Superman is an expression of that. And Metropolis Clark is the disguise. It's not Metropolis Clark is not the right guy. He's not the same guy. He's not the real guy. Superman is somebody who needs to connect to the world like we all do, especially because he is lonely. And the way you connect to the world is you go out there and you do what you do best and you give it your all.
Yeah.
And that's what motivates him. Yeah.
Definitely. And if anyone's watching who, I can't recommend Superman Birthright enough. Everyone, it's like, I think if you need, like, probably one of like that and All-Star Superman, my two favorite Superman stories. It's like the perfect Superman, I think, experience. So writing Birthright, was that kind of your ultimate take on just Superman and his origin story in general? Was that like everything you taught Superman, was that just thrown into that book?
It was. I made deliberate compromises. I mean, it's not 100% my version of Superman exactly. I mean, but that's because here's the thing. If you're going to do a project like this, my feeling is you have to take your ego out of the equation, because these characters have been around 60, 70, 80 years.
Yeah.
They've been long before you were born. They're going to outlive you quite a bit. And so for you to think you're the genius who knows all the parts that work and all the parts that don't work, and only you do, that's a recipe for disaster. The best example is, in my mind, Superman works best when the Kents are gone, when the Kents have passed on.
Oh, really?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Because again, my issue with the Kents being alive is that too often, then, as we've seen in comics, too often, he's got a problem, so he flies home and he has a piece of pie with Ma and Pa, and he talks about his problem and so forth. And to me, that's very relatable. Absolutely, that's very homey. That's very warm. But it doesn't make him an adult. Like it.
Yeah, I see. Yeah.
I need him to make his own. I need him to be his own man and make his own decisions, and not go home all the time and say, "Gee, Pa, what do you think?" I also think it's important that Superman have tragedy in his life, and losing Krypton is a huge tragedy, but he doesn't have that same emotional connection to it. But the important lesson, as we saw in Superman the movie and before that in so many other places, is that there are certain things that Superman can't do, and there's only one thing really he can't do, and that is he can't outrace death. He can't bring Ma and Pa life. There are certain things in the universe that are just out of his control.
Like John 10 dying of a heart attack. It's like,
yes.
No matter how strong you are, you can't laser vision a heart attack.
Exactly.
And that's really healthy. Yeah.
So I think that's really, so to me, that's my vision of Superman. All of that said, it's not a knock against anybody who has a different take on the Kents, but that's my take on the Kents.
That's fantastic. I can absolutely see that. I think that's a brilliant take there. And it's something that's kind of weird about whenever I ask about Superman, you can see that like the writer, their faces light up and they give me the answer. Like Philip Kennedy Johnson said, fantastic writer, everyone go check out his work. Action Comics is in stores right now. He said he wants Superman to show him the way. And in a way that like Superman making mistakes is like, but he should be the best of us. He's like, he should be the one who shows us the way. And like Matt Fraction even said, like Matt Fraction, he's such a funny writer. He can do great stuff. He said when he's writing like, Jimmy Olsen, he straightened up because he didn't want to make a joke as Superman. He wanted to, like, even something like Jimmy Olsen, you can have Superman be that character. And it's like, I think it's very rare that a character will be more than a character. But for me, I kind of look at Superman more as an idea, like the foundations. It's very, like, I think it's only really him, Batman, and maybe even Captain America who I can look at as an idea, but Superman the most. Like, he represents hope, justice, liberty. And like growing up, he was never really my favorite, but like I always kind of felt grateful he was there. Like, if everyone else fails, Superman's always going to be there. So that leads me on to my next question. This is something that's been done a lot.
It turns out I realized I got off on such a tangent. I didn't answer the original question, which is Birthright being my ultimate version of who I think Superman is. It is to an extent, but I said I had to make compromises. And the Kents was one of them. It was the idea that the Kents were still alive. And it wasn't a mandate from editorial. What it was is me being realistic and surveying the landscape and realizing that the Kents have been alive for most of our readers' lifetimes. And people as a general rule, people seem to like having the Kents alive. So it would seem foolish to take that away. that sort of thing, little things like that. I wanted to tweak, even though it's not my perfect vision of Superman, but I don't want to alienate anyone either as I'm writing that character. I don't want it to look so foreign to the Superman that that it's like an Elseworlds or something like that. So that was the answer to the previous question. Now you have another question.
No, absolutely. But no, like I love there, like especially with the Kents, like I think even though you did put them in, that dynamic of like John not really being able to comprehend, like, yeah, he's not my son though, he's not mine. Like, but then he kind of comes around. I think that's like the best take you can do, because it's Superman and he says no, but like, where do you think I got this from? You know, and it's like that's the reason Superman's not Homelander, or maybe perhaps a character from another comic called, Irredeemable or Incorruptible or something like that. Yeah, but there you go. And you can see that, and it's like because he was raised by kind farmers. And I love that aspect so much. But yeah, my next question, I asked this of Grant as well, my other best friend. Don't worry, you're still there. We're like three best friends. We're all on the same caliber, I assume, no, but actually, what are your thoughts on evil Superman? And like, this isn't a slight at all, like the Tom Taylor with Injustice, one of the greatest stories of all time. I really love his take, but to me, I've and I think that my favorite version of evil Superman, and it's not evil, but it's Kingdom Come, because that's the furthest I think I'd be okay with someone pushing him, where he's still good at his core, but he's just kind of pushing a little bit. So I think that's my best kind of understanding of that. But what's your take on evil Superman? Are you a fan of that? Do you think it can be executed properly? Or
I hope I executed it reasonably properly with Irredeemable. But it is so easy to screw up.
Oh, really?
Well, here's the thing. Writing, if your goal is just to write what if Superman were a bad guy, that is low hanging fruit. Like anyone can write that story because it writes itself. And as a writer, never write a story that the audience can write for you without your help. So when I took on Irredeemable, when I came up with Irredeemable and started building that, it was less about what if Superman were evil and more about why would what would make Superman evil? What are the things that would happen? What would have to go on in a character like this? And it really all came down to, if you're not adopted by the Kents, I mean, it's a very similar character in Irredeemable with the Plutonian. And the big difference being he was found by a mentally disturbed woman with a drug habit and terrible with kids and shouldn't be anywhere near children, and then put into adoption after adoption after adoption. And then, every time some couple adopts him, he'll do something with it. He's a kid. He'll do something with the superpowers that scares them, and they'll put him back in the orphanage. And so what does that do to somebody with that power? What does that do to somebody with it? It's nature versus nurture. What happens if you take nurture out of the equation altogether? Yeah,
absolutely. And that's what I love about Irredeemable. So is that kind of like a no holds barred kind of thing? Like, because you're not desecrating Superman. Like,
no,
it's not like I'm going to turn Superman bad and have it going on for like 30 issues of pure that. So did you feel like you could just, all right, let loose, this is my character, I can just do whatever I want with him, I can twist him, I can make him this evil sadistic take, so that way you don't really have to, you'll always be creatively fulfilled with that, and you won't have to do it in Superman. So did you feel like you could just let loose with Irredeemable?
That's a story I could certainly never tell.
Was it weirdly fun to write that cruel Superman aspect? No. Not really.
Because here's the thing. It depends on how you define cruel. Because what I found out early on with writing Irredeemable is that with all of those Superman level powers, what kind of things is he doing to be evil? Yeah. And in the fourth issue, I had him literally sink the island of Singapore into the ocean. And as I sat down with issue 5, I thought, where do I go from there? Like, and it made me completely rethink what my vision of evil is for this character. And it's a complete turn. Whereas in 5, it begins with him basically just making a broadcast to the whole world, and he's basically just talking about himself and the glory of him or whatever. But he's saying things like, Steve Johnson of Altoona, Pennsylvania, I just want to let you know that your wife's cheating on you right now. That kind of, or that, you have cancer or whatever. He's just being cruel and sadistic, as opposed to toppling buildings, which he does to some degree, but it's more fun and more interesting, I think, to write him as someone who is using his powers in a that sort of way. I always say that I think the trick to writing these characters well, and it's certainly the trick that I use, is you have to think about what it's like to be these characters every moment of the day, not just when they're punching things, but what is your life like on a moment to moment basis if you have super hearing and supervision, or if you were Daredevil and you have, radar sense or whatever. When I was writing Daredevil, there was never a point in the whole time I was writing it where I wasn't someplace on any given day, every day, wherever I was, there'd be someplace I would be standing and I'd be going, I wonder how Matt Murdock would perceive this situation. I wonder what he would take away from this environment.
Yeah.
So you have to, and so that's, that was my into the Plutonian then, right? It's not just I'm super strong and therefore I'm going to be evil by pushing continents into oceans. It's going to be, I'm going to be using my powers in smaller, more insidious ways as well.
Yeah, and that's such an interesting point. I love Burger because that's something I've always associated with your writings, that you, I think, in a way, become this character. Like you look at Daredevil, and I think it's one of my favorite, because it's one of my favorite Daredevil takes, because we see it in radar senses, and he's like, I can hear the sound of trains 2 blocks away, I can smell, and then like you even incorporate the sprinklers, the rain. It muddles up his senses. And it's like you brought up there, okay, well, what is evil? If I was this character, what would I do? And I think maybe what other writers do, or I think what kind of the common thing is from the stories, like, wouldn't it be cool if Superman did this? But for you can kind of hop inside these characters. So is that something you do a lot in your work?
Yeah, it's the key to my work. I mean, awesome. If I wasn't doing that, I don't know what I'd be doing for a living, because it wouldn't be any fun otherwise.
You're so good at it anyway.
Thanks. I mean, the fun of it is getting in. I mean, and like you said, trying to and if you're in there enough, then you're able to think of different ways for them to behave, or different things for them to do that you've never seen before. There's a moment in World's Finest where Superman's fighting a magical character and he's powerless against magic.
Yeah.
And so Superman just starts to whistle. You can't even hear anything. He just starts to whistle. And the villain is like, you're whistling, that's the thing. And he's not just whistling, he's whistling infrasonic sound, which is the stuff that the military uses, to create that you can't hear, but it creates the vibrations that give you spasms, that give you muscle spasms, that give you, attacks and cause seizures and stuff. That's a real thing. And so why isn't Superman able to do that? Let's do that. That's genius. That's what I love about your work, is how, you can jump inside these characters. And so something with Irredeemable, I imagine it's kind of easier, and obviously no disrespect, but it's kind of easier to imagine you're a blind person than to imagine that you're a super villain who wants to kill everything. Or maybe I'm wrong in that. But it depends on my mood at any given time, but yes.
Yeah, there you go. Maybe whenever someone gets your coffee order wrong, you're like, I'm going to push this continent into nothing. I'm going to absolutely desecrate every building. And then so on the flip side of that, Incorruptible, which is like, I think, was it more satisfying for you as a writer to write someone going from good to bad than bad to good? Or which one did you find more? I imagine it was kind of bad to good, was it?
It was, satisfying is not really the word, because I found them both sort of equally satisfying, just in a different way. You're using different muscles. With Irredeemable, it's about the hero who turns into a villain, whereas with Incorruptible, it's the flip side. It's the Plutonian's arch enemy, Max Damage, who decides, well, he's gone rogue and I'm the only person who can stop him, so I guess I better be a good guy. And he's constantly in a Walter White state, trying to be a good guy, but trying not to do the bad thing at the same time. So, or reverse Walter White, right? He's trying to be good, but there's always the dark side inside him. So, the equally satisfying.
Yeah. Oh yeah, that's really interesting. But so, when you're crafting your own world, I imagine a lot of it, there's obviously inspiration from DC and Marvel, but I imagine there's, like we touched on this a minute ago, there's so much more freedom attested because they're not characters with legacy. They're not legacy characters. So did you feel like you could just kind of let loose? And I imagine that's like so freeing for you, because like you've done so much on Flash And it's
It
like,
is Daniel is the opposite.
no,
It's
you're
the opposite.
joking.
I hate world building.
No
I
way, really?
I don't enjoy it. I'm here doing these things, writing these comics because I love these characters and because they meant so much to me growing up and because I understand the power of them today, not just, not in the comics, but outside the comics and the power they hold. And that's the fun of it for me. So, if I have to come up with something completely out of my head, like Empire or Irredeemable or whatever, there's a lot of work to be done there. You don't have the Batcave to fall back on. You don't have the Fortress of Solitude to fall back on. You've got to make up your own stuff. And I like playing with the toys.
Yeah, and I don't think, I think it comes through that you have a lot of love for these DC characters. Like Kingdom Come had so much characters I just didn't know existed. Like it's such a great. So I think when you have something like that, and like obviously that's actually real. That's the first time I think I've ever heard something like that. It's kind of more freeing to be let loose at DC than it is for your own stuff. That's fascinating.
I'm probably the only person you're ever going to interview who's going to say that, but that's my take.
You're still my best friend. Don't worry. I'll still give you that. I'll search in my hearts of hearts. But so I think between we're talking about kind of evil Superman and good Superman. What is your Kingdom Come Superman? Does he kind of fall in I think I kind of look at him as good, but where does he fall for you? Your take on Kingdom Come Superman?
He skirts right up to the darkest of Superman. He has, without Lois, without the Kents, without humanity around him as self-imposed exile, he just becomes more Kryptonian, basically. He just becomes less kind, less thoughtful, less accommodating of humanity's sins.
Definitely.
It's the difference between Kryptonian and the difference between Krypton and Earth is this. On Earth, the general philosophy is that we value science, but we value humanity even more, right? Whereas on Krypton, it's the reverse. On Krypton, it is we value humanity. Absolutely, Kryptonians. We value humanity. We are kind. We are good people, but we worship science. And so that's the difference. So if you're not careful with Superman, and if he didn't have the humanity, he would just grow into the evil scientist trope is what he'd do. So.
Oh, definitely. Yeah. And I really love that take there. And like Kingdom Come's my favorite Superman too. I'm sure that's Alex there. It's such a good series, everyone. And it's one of my honestly favorite comic book series of all time. Like it's genius. And so let me ask you this. And I was reading it, I was flipping through the back because I'm so professional, but it was like all writing and biographies. I was like, I can't believe I have to read this part. There's no pictures. But Dr. Fate is a dolphin.
Yeah. It's not me.
No, not you. What?
Not me.
Just enlighten us, because I just said Dr. Fate's dolphin. Everyone's watching this thinking, what?
I think that I have been sufficiently upbraided by Alex over the years to understand that apparently that was more of a joke than anything else. Although I didn't take that suggestion, and it wasn't Alex's suggestion either, but it was someone else, and it was look. It's not completely insane because dolphins next to humans are about the most intelligent creatures there are out there. So, and a lot of times I just think dolphins are just waiting for us to get, to do ourselves in so they can finally have the rule of the place.
Is that your pitch? Dolphins rule the world? And like
that's the one.
We see in the series, Aquaman says he rules the other 70% of the planet. Are there dolphins on the loose? Are they building their own dolphin legion under the ground?
Well, what are they up to exactly?
That's the question. That's what I've always been wondering. That's what I think every comic book fan at some point has stroked their chin and thought, well, what if dolphins ruled the world? And there you go. But like we said, that's a story everyone has thought of, so you couldn't possibly write that because we've all done that at some point. But we've all done that. Yeah, no. But while we're touching on Kingdom Come, do you think that obviously you got to fit in so much characters? Was there any characters you didn't get to do much with that you would have loved to explore more? Or maybe just some characters that even in other media you've gotten to do your fill out. So you're like, no, I can leave that. Because like I think Flash, you probably didn't have to touch on him too much in Kingdom Come because it's like, if only Mark Waid wrote the Flash, and it's like there's 8 years of content. But
I don't know. I mean, with Kingdom Come, we stuffed so much into those 4 issues. I do remember at one point that Alex and I had discussed a running subplot between Dick Grayson and his daughter as a little subplot that would echo more about Norman McKay, the narrator, and finding out that he also has an estranged daughter, and going a little bit more into those characters, which would have been awesome if we'd had 400 pages, but we didn't. So, we got 180 pages. We've got to wrap this thing up.
Yeah.
And so you got to make your cuts. You got to make your trims. I tell you who really did a good job of expanding on it. I don't know if you've read the novel. Have you read the novel?
No, there's a novel.
It is so good. We commissioned, they wanted a novelization of it after the fact because it did so well. Warner Brothers did. And I'm like, it's 180 pages of comics. That's not going to fill a novel. And B, I don't know how to write a novel. I'm sure that if I sat down and taught myself how to write a novel, I could do it, but I don't have the time and I don't have the energy. But Elliot Magan, who is my favorite living Superman writer, that's the guy.
High praise.
Yeah, Elliot's the best.
I'm checking this out.
And you need to have Elliot on your show at some point, because you talk about somebody who can tell you about Superman. So we contacted Elliot, who signed on, and then took the Kingdom Come story and basically uses an outline and a structure for a really, really good prose novel that tells the same story, but it's way more in depth, and there's way more asides, and there's a little more to subplotting here and there. And I'm good with all of it. Like, I think it's all awesome. So I'm sure you'll be able to find it fairly inexpensively somewhere.
I'll definitely have to check that out. That sounds fantastic. And I love your take on the older Justice League. And I think Kingdom Come is it, but I'd love to see you do like even just a 6-issue mini of just your take on all like Justice League as old people. Because that's not something that's been done. Like that image of Green Lantern, like on his throne, kind of watching Earth. That's so cool. And I'd love to see more on that, And like, are you aware of Condiment King?
Yes, of course.
Let's do an old man Condiment King.
First off, is it a DC character? Then yes, I'm aware of the character. Yes, but yes, Old Man Condiment King.
This is why you're my best friend, Mark. Like I always bring up Condiment King in all my videos, and I don't know why, but I just love this character, and I have here's my plan. I'm gonna give it to every single DC writer. One day, the editors will be like, "Why is there an influx of Condiment King stories? What's this about?" So I'm so like kind of putting it in your mind subliminally,
planting the seeds. Gotcha.
Wouldn't Condiment King being like Superman and Batman's world finest? Wouldn't that be crazy? Like, this is something you've just come up with. You just said that a minute ago. You must have forgotten, but
I must have forgotten.
That's a crazy, but like, I think, and it says so much about capitalism and human greed when he shoots ketchup out of his gun. It's like, oh wow, that's heavy. That's a heavy take. And something that's equally as heavy is I love how you dealt with Shazam in that story. Like, and that's something like that's always fascinating because I'd be a great Shazam and a great Robin. I'm only saying this because they're the only two like characters who are about my age, so I can kind of get away with that. But so writing Shazam, and I think the Shazam versus Superman battle, and in those final moments, Superman appeals just pure to the light. He kind of steps into that light that we all know Superman as, and Shazam he's overwhelmed by it. And I think he has that moment where he just doesn't send, and he just pushes it, and it's like masterful storytelling. So it's such great pitch. So what's it like for you getting to write the Shazam character?
Give it enough time, I will be able to finally get my hands on Shazam. So nice. Sooner than later, hopefully. I mean, that's the one major DC character I've never really had a crack at. So I would
Kingdom Come, I think when there's like a kind of character like Shazam in it, you've left your mark on it. But I'd love to see you do more of a Shazam. And like that Dr. Savannah worms in his ears. Yeah, I love it. It's so good. So good. Absolutely. But yeah, no, I'd love to see you. So let me ask you, is there any characters you haven't had a crack at yet that you'd like to?
Shazam. Other than that,
Condiment King. Did you hear that? There must be a breeze.
I mean, it's tricky because if you look at my 40-year career, Jesus Christ, 40 years, where did you sleep? I've written every character. I've written everybody at some point or another. And certainly all the characters I want to write. I don't know if there's any, even Adam Strange I got to do one story of for Justice League. I mean, there's, Metamorpho I got to do a miniseries. Any of the C-list characters that I love, I've still been able to work in somewhere in my career. So other than Shazam, I don't know. But frankly, right now, I'm just having a ball writing Superman, Batman. So that's plenty enough for me.
Nice, yeah. Superman, Batman, Condiment King, World's Finest. It's all the same. It's not just a title. Don't bog yourself down in the specifics of it. But yeah, and like I think I think, this may be crazy, but there's a character you should do called Conan the Barbarian. I think you'd just be so good in a series like that. He's such a now. Obviously, it's Conan King. Do Conan King. Have him met. See, like I said, subliminally implanting it in his head.
Moving on.
Is it
Moving
working?
on. Moving on.
You always do this. You always play the Oscar sounds whenever I start talking about Conan King. 90-second speech. Now, one of the last comics I want to touch on, like I said, my first ever Mark Waid comic, definitely my last. It's Daredevil. Your work on Daredevil is so good. Let me ask you, how did you come to this character? Stephen Wacker, fantastic editor. I'll have to have him on the show soon. Did he offer the job to you, or?
Steve Wacker, who was my editor at Marvel, called and said, "How do you feel about taking over Daredevil?" And I said, "Nope." He said, "That was pretty quick." I said, he said, "You got that bullet. You had that bullet in the chamber." I said, "No, I'm just not interested because it's a great character, but it's grim and it's dark and it's cynical. And these are things that I can appreciate as a reader, but I do not do well as a writer."
Yeah.
It doesn't mean I can't write dark, disturbing stuff. Anybody who's ever read Empire knows I can write really dark, disturbing stuff, but I can't write cynical stuff.
Yeah.
And that's just, again, because it's easy. Anybody can write cynical. It is the easiest thing in the world to do. So I said that I don't have it. And Steve then came back and said, "Well, the good news is Marvel has decided they kind of want to see him as a superhero for a little while and not just, straight up crime book." I said, "Well, and stand back, because we can make that happen," and crack my knuckles. Yeah. And Steve and I spent hours and hours talking about it. The fact that Paulo Rivera and Marcos Martin were lined up to do the art was an enormous part of the appeal, because I knew that even if people hated my take on Daredevil, it would look great.
That's all you can ask for as a writer.
Right. But again, it just came down to digging into the character, figuring out the parts that work for me, the parts that make sense to me. Yeah. And really kind of zeroing in on his depression and using that as my way into that character. And here's a guy who is, clearly, I mean, the worst things in the Marvel universe have all happened to Daredevil. I mean, he's the most hard luck hero there is.
Yeah.
So, and he generally deals with that by being dark and gloomy. And there's a point at which, as a rational human being, you have to realize that that's not working. Like, that clearly is not making his life any better. The only thing he knows to do, at least in my series, is I'm just going to fake it till I make it. I'm going to pretend to be happy and fake it till I make it, because that's something I haven't tried yet. It's the only thing I know how left to try, because I keep digging a hole and then you're thinking I've hit the bottom, and then God hands me another shovel. Yeah. So that's Daredevil. So then it became, right? Then it became, all right, thinking very hard about the sense of taste, the sense of smell, the sense of touch, answering questions like, can Daredevil, see through windows? Nope. His radar sense doesn't work in windows. If you see, or coming up with the idea that if you'll look in most of the stories I wrote, I try hard to make sure that his superpowers are a help at least once, and at least once in a story, a hindrance, right?
Yeah, that's what we were touching on earlier about getting inside the heads of these characters.
Yeah.
I think a lot of other writers maybe wouldn't, go after.
No, but putting him in a stairwell, well, he doesn't know what floor he's on. He can't read the signs. Yeah. If somebody comes up to him, if some cop comes up to him and says, "Daredevil, I want you to see this," and shows him an iPad in his face, he doesn't know what to make of it. So that all comes from thinking very hard about what your life would be like if you had these powers. And that is the key to everything.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm like, yeah, that's such a great, I love how you deal with Matt Murdock. Because I think when we think of characters, we have a visual image. When you think of Superman, you see him like that, pose, and maybe you see him, that iconic Frank Whiteley image of him sitting on a cloud. You see stuff like that. But for Daredevil, I always get this image of him it bleeding in an alleyway, in the mud, bleeding, everyone he lost. And there's obviously that. So when you're dealing with it, you just threw everything at this guy. So it was a fun thing, kind of, I think, in a way, I don't know, not torture, I don't know if that's the right word, but torture him and give him these challenges. Was that fun for you to explore as a writer?
It was, I mean, the trick was, as I said, Daredevil historically with Bendis and Miller. And by the way, another reason I want to do a superhero take is because Ever since Miller has come, ever since Frank Miller did Daredevil, everyone else has done their take on Frank Miller's Daredevil. And I sit down with it and I'm like, I will never write a Daredevil like Frank's as well as Frank's. No one can. So why would I even try? Let's go a different direction. So throwing everything out, it was, I don't know. I mean, just my vision of Daredevil, yours is, you describe yours, my vision of Daredevil is him hurling himself into danger with a big smile on his face, having no earthly idea how he's going to get out of it.
Is that quote? What's that quote from the series? If I could see half the things in front of me,
I'd be scared out of my mind. Yeah.
Yes. Oh, I love that. That's such a Daredevil quote. And some more of my favorite moments. I was reading it and I was like, because I'm so fresh, I was taking down notes of what to ask Mark. And, of course I could ask about dealing with this character and all these series, but Baba Booey, in one moment, there's a press conference in Matt Saga, and there's a little panel, right? And I say this so much to my friends for no reason. Whenever I try to go Baba Booey, Baba Booey. And so when I saw Baba Booey, I was like, yeah, I love it. So what made you say Baba Booey? What?
That was a Steve Wacker joke. That was a Steve
Wacker joke. Just Baba Booey, Baba Booey.
The three great jokes in that book that are Steve's are that one, the I'm not Daredevil sweater, that's Steve's joke, and the kid in the bus who looks at Batman, who looks at Daredevil and says, "Look, Babby, it's Red Batman." For which he got in trouble, and we had to have it changed in the trade paperback or something.
You actually get in trouble?
I don't, because lawyers are, lawyers have to prove they exist. Listen, I don't know. It wasn't serious trouble.
Die standing and live kneeling. You did a great job there. Absolutely. But yeah, no, that's such a fun take. And I love how you even did one of my favorite stories. I mean, obviously my number one, I think, just because I remember I read this on a summer's day. I read it once in Canada, then I read it again on a summer's day. And I love this book. It means so much to me. It's like my Mark Waid comic,
Thank you.
No, it's my thank you for coming on. But no, and I think, when you have a character like Daredevil, you can do so much. You can throw so much at him. And like you said, he'll always come back with a smile. And I don't think there's any other character like him just in the DC universe. And then dealing with his surroundings. Like my favorite story, one of my other favorite stories besides that one is the graveyard story where Mole Man has taken a grave, and you see like even a character like Mole Man, you had me feeling for Mole Man, which just says like, he's like, I'm not hurting anyone. This was the only woman who was ever kind to me. And I think there's that moment where you can even see Matt. He's like, I don't think he wants to admit it, but there's a part of him that's like, I understand what it's like to lose someone.
Yeah, of course.
You see that there, and I think that was such a good story because it made me feel for Mole Man. So was it fun for you to get to even explore these characters and give everyone their reason and give them all their meaning? I suppose
that's what it's all about. I mean, the deeper the characters are, the more layered the characters are, whether they're heroes or villains, the more you're going to care about them.
Yeah.
And that's a secret to writing a story that people read, is you give them a character that they care about and want to follow their adventures. Whether they're a good guy or a bad guy, they want something for that character and they're emotionally invested. So that's, if you're just writing these characters as flat two-dimensional characters, there's nothing for people to grab onto.
Definitely. And then just Stilt Man was a great character. He just like, I was reading this and I was like, oh, so this is comics. Daredevil's decapitated. He's been kidnapped by this crazy guy. Yeah. There's Stilt Man. I understand comics. I get it. And so I love that. But Stilt Man, the best Daredevil villain, probably by New York miles. What was it like getting to write Stilt Man? And you utilized his powers in a weird way. Like,
that's the thing. I mean, highly underrated Stilt Man as a villain. I don't know. Sometimes it's just Steve Wacker and I get on the phone and we just make a joke and we start laughing and then it turns into a story. And this is true, the best ideas start as jokes without fail.
You're telling me this joke I've been making 10 minutes ago is actually the next Watchmen. Condiment King is the next Watchmen. Thank you, Mark. That's what I've been saying.
Moving along.
Sound problems? You can't hear me, is that it?
Moving along.
Oh, okay, fine. Care anyway. So what we were talking about, Stilt Man and all these different characters. Is there anyone you didn't get to utilize in Daredevil that, looking back, you're like, maybe that's a fun Marvel villain I could have used?
I don't think so.
I love how you just turned like Bullseye, my favorite Daredevil villain, into just a box.
Yeah. No, I think I got the villains in that I want to. I think that I don't think there's any untold Daredevil stories that are still in my back pocket. So yeah, I think I got a pretty good run.
Definitely. And like, like I think we touched on this, and like I know we'll wrap up in a minute, but like when you have something like Daredevil, like I know you delved into depression with a few issues, which was I know that helped so many people. Like that's the joy of comics, I think. And then when you have Foggy Nelson, who was suffering with cancer, I think the thing is comics for me, it's like, yeah, you know, I think obviously, you know, Cry Me a River, the little violinist playing, but we've all gone through something where comics has given us something greater to believe in. And like when I interviewed Grant Morrison, they were saying that, you know, that Superman page where the girl stops herself from something, that saved people. And I was like, okay, so that's comics. And then like when you have something like, you know, where he deals with depression that actually helped real people, that's the joy of these stories. Like comics is one thing, but when it expands and it goes past just ridiculous stories, and it's like, this saved a real life, because I think all we have is each other in this universe in a weird way. Like, yeah, like, you know, obviously that's a whole different argument, but like all we have is the people close to us. So if comics can help us in some way cope or realize or get past specific trauma, well, then that's just the joy of comics. So dealing with something like that, did you kind of feel like you had to sit up a minute and say, okay, well, this is real. This is like, this is depression.
And treat it real. Exactly. And yeah, but like you said, you know, if these comics can help people, and that gets back to what I was saying earlier about the power of these characters, whether inside the comic or outside the comic. You know, I mean, a lot of people deal with depression. I deal with depression. And so I wasn't trying to like Mary Sue him and make him a surrogate for me. It's more that I see a lot of depression in Daredevil. Anybody could. And here's my insights, and here's what I can bring to that character. And we got, you know, we did the thing with Matt Murdock's mom, where we, you know, dealt with postpartum depression, and we got so many letters and so much coverage from women's magazines and from women's organizations that really appreciated the fact that we put that forth and got that out there. I love doing that. I don't ever sit down and go, okay, I should do a story about multiple sclerosis because that'll get a lot of attention. It's more, it just organically feeds into the story. What's the worst thing that can happen to your characters? That's the question you keep having to ask yourself as a superhero writer. What is the worst thing that can happen to this guy?
Yeah, definitely. Like, you know, Foggy having cancer as well. What was it like getting to write that? I imagine you kind of had to, you know, be more careful, because like, you know, I've of course known people, you know, with cancer and stuff like that, and it's obviously it's heartbreaking. Like we've known, but like when you can see in comics these characters who are getting through, like I think it's a different level of praise if someone says to you, "I like your Daredevil," or if someone says, "Your Daredevil saved me." You know, when you look at it, you're like, well, which one's kind of a higher compliment, you know? So, you know, like when you were dealing with Foggy having cancer, were you kind of careful with that as well?
Yeah, I mean, I had to be respectful. I mean, it wasn't hard to be respectful because my mother died of cancer, and I was there. And it was, you know, I'd known people who've died of cancer, and it's a horrible, terrible thing.
Yeah.
If I remember correctly, actually, it was Dan Buckley, who was the publisher of Marvel, who said to the editors, you know, we would like to do some sort of story about cancer and coping with cancer. Who would like to step up? And Steve Wacker and I talked, and we said, you know, Foggy would be a really good candidate. My only stipulation, my only demand was it has to go into remission at some point. I cannot write a story where Foggy gets cancer and dies, because yes, that's realistic, but so is remission. And we get back to cynical stories again.
And I think that would help more people if they saw him. He was remission. Then imagine like, you know, the other aspect, I think that'd be, so I think, that's definitely a great choice. But like I said, that's just the joy of these stories. And that's why I think comics just expands past that. Like, that's what it is to me. And it's like, I mean, people think of comics, they think of like 2 pages, Superman punching someone, and that's comics, isn't it? But it's like, when it helps real people, like that's the best you can ask for. Like maybe in the grand scheme of things, none of this matters. But when you have something that can change someone's life, like with words and pictures, that's one of the beautiful things about comics. And so, you know, just before we wrap up, let me ask you my last couple of questions. What is the Mark Waid book? If I asked this for my guest, if you said, you want to hear the Mark Waid experience, this is my definitive book. It must be so hard for you.
I mean, what do I think is my most representative work or my best work?
Yeah.
Birthright. It's Superman Birthright. It's not hard at all.
Nice. Oh, wow. That's fantastic. And like Superman Birthright, of course, man, we talked about that a lot. But I have to take a minute shout out this. I got Black Widow. I got this for my sister for Christmas. And like, oh man, trying to get my sister into comics was the most tedious thing ever. But this is her favorite comic, like, because she loves Black Widow. And I was like, so Katie, and she told me to say thank you. So Katie, there you go.
look, Greg, all credit to Chris Somney. I mean, I was with that comic. Chris was a bullet train, and I was basically just hanging on. We talk about the plot, and then Chris would go off and do the actual plot and turn in pages, and I would dialogue them. So I had input at the beginning and the end, but the hard work, the heavy lifting, that was all Chris.
Yeah, but Liz, you and Chris are a fantastic team. But like my sister really enjoyed it, so just props to you for finally getting my sister to enjoy a comic. There you go, everyone. Cool. But yeah, so one of my last final questions before we finish up. Adaptations of your work, if you could adapt any film, because today there was an article over at CBR where you talked about on the Spec Tales podcast. Everyone go check them out. You know, the potential of, you know, an Irredeemable film and, you know, stuff like that. So in adaptations of your works kind of in the work. And another thing, I don't know if you noticed it, but in 3 billboards outside of Ebbing, Missouri, there was a comic. I saw that in the film. I immediately, I was like,
that's so cool that Incorruptible is in the Incorruptible comic is everywhere. He's got a T-shirt with the Incorruptible on it. I think that was great. And in terms of adaptations, all I can say is I think that some people will be very happy over the next few weeks as certain news comes out about certain things, and that's really all I can say at this point. Yeah.
So my last and final question. I'm so sorry. We'll wrap up here, but
that's right.
Anyone who's looking to get into comic books, what advice would you have for them as a writer, and what advice would you have for anyone looking to get into comics?
Okay, it's easier now than it ever was, which is great. When I was starting out, you had to make your own paper comics and go to Kinko's and print them out and take them to conventions and show them to people and hope that they would have time to read them and so forth. The internet has democratized comics, which is great.
Yeah.
If you want to be in comics, go do a web comic. You're in comics. Surprise. The thing is, most publishers, including Humanoids, and I know including Marvel and probably DC, they have people who are looking at webcomics, just checking out what's out there and using that as a resource, as paying attention, the same as they are with other print comics, because they can see, what you do. I think that if you're a writer, find an artist. If you're an artist that not comfortable with your storytelling skills, find a writer. Go create a web page, go do your own web comic, and all you have to lose is sweat equity. But the important thing is this: not only is it an audition piece for you, right? You're doing it online where anybody can see it, but as an editor and a publisher, I'll tell you that if I see your web comic and I like it, and I also see that you've been doing it on a regular basis, whether it's weekly or daily or monthly or whatever, you're doing it on a regular basis for a great length of time, that gives you a real leg up, because now I know not only are you good, but you have a work ethic, and that's important. So that's my advice to creators who want to get in: is it ain't hard to start. The next step of getting hired by the majors is the hard part, but the easier part is, look, just do comics. Go online. Do comics.
I could not have put it better myself. We'll wrap up now. Everyone, thank you guys so much for watching. Mark, do you on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, anything like that? Anything people can check you out on?
Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, although not so much, because that Twitter is just evil, an evil cauldron of rage. But yeah.
All at Mark Waid.
I can be found. Yes.
Yeah, brilliant.
I think Instagram is Waid Mark, because some other jerk took Mark Waid. So
you're that famous, any new comics you'd like to talk about, promote?
World's Finest we talked about. The other thing, another comic I would like to talk about is something we did at Humanoids that I'm really proud of. I didn't write it, I didn't draw it, but it's a book called The History of Science Fiction.
I would have loved to touch on your Humanoids work. I'll have to have you back on the channel and just delve into that.
We'll do it some other time. But this book from Humanoids, it's The History of Science Fiction, a 200-page hardcover, and it is partly graphic novel, partly illustrated text. But what's amazing about it is super, super comprehensive and this is the kind of book you would use in universities and libraries, but it doesn't read like homework. It's entertaining, but it's not just a cursory look. It's a name check and an examination of literally hundreds and hundreds of writers who have been contributing to the science fiction genre over the years, and what that means, and studying it from a sociological point of view, studying it from an historical point of view. It is such a great book. I cannot recommend that enough. And so it's out now, History of Science Fiction. I encourage people to go look.
Brilliant. Everyone should go check that out. You can go follow me over on Twitter at SamboGizmo1. As always, if you have the means, please make sure to donate to the National Deaf Children's Society. Link for that in the description. Please make sure to like and subscribe. Stay awesome. Read comics. Me and Mark's Condiment King comic is coming out sometime soon. I don't know when. I just have to apparently get past his emails. But Batman, Superman, World's Finest is out in your local comic book stores. As always, thanks to Donna, Simon, KE, and yeah. But everyone, thank you guys so much for watching. Mark, thank you, sir. It's been an absolute honor chatting with you. I'll talk to you just a little bit off air. But yeah, thank you guys so much for watching. I'll see you on the next video. Bye.